explaining about the Scott V Sandford SCOTUS case. This case all started when a black man was moved to Minnesota, which is a free state, and was kept enslaved. He was then moved back to the South and enslaved. He decided to sue his owner's widow, who wasn't technically his owner, and ended up suing the federal courts. The case was is considered civil. It started in the state and district courts and moved its way up to the Supreme Court in March 1875. The court case had a unique ruling. They all agreed that Dred Scott should be free. It seemed like he won, but wait, the justices agreed with him, but he was not considered a person, but property. In the end, Dred Scott still had to be a slave because he was quote-unquote property. This was just one of the events that led up to the Civil War.
I am explaining the Plessy v. Ferguson SCOTUS case. The case went up to the state courts. It started out as a criminal case, but then changed to civil. In 1896, there was a man named Plessy who was 7/8 white and 1/8 black. He was a known civil rights activist and told the police that he would be sitting on an all-white train car. Right when he sat down, the police arrested him. He sued Ferguson, who was the judge of the district court. Plessy said that things were separate and not equal. When the case ended, the Supreme Court justices ruled in favor of Ferguson. They said that the things in the train car may not be equal, but everyone had an equal opportunity to ride the train, therefore it was separate and equal.
I'm going to explain the Brown v. Board of Education SCOTUS case. In the early 1950s, black students were tired of having to go to segregated schools, but in 1896, the Supreme Court had already ruled that the segregation could occur as long as the schools were equal, or as we know it, separate but equal. In many places, black students would have to walk long, sometimes even dangerous distances to get to their schools. An example of this was a girl and her sister who had to walk through a train yard to get to their school every day. Oliver Brown and the NAACP argued that the segregated schools were not equal and couldn't be made equal because it sent an inferior message to the black students, therefore violating the 14th Amendment. The Supreme Court agreed, stating that the separate but equal stance had no place in schools. This included colleges and universities. The separate but equal doctrine still occurred everywhere else, but it was a big step towards equality in the U.S. This is considered a civil case because it was between two groups.
These three court cases led up to the Civil War and blacks' freedom. At first, when they got ruled against, it was very disappointing. But then the Separate but Equal Act came out, and then they started unsegregating in schools, which led to a series of events up to the Civil War.
Yeah.